Election time is here. We're close to it. We got to figure out what the hell's going on in the world of the economy. Joining us now, my buddy Zach Abraham, Chief Investment Officer, Bulwark Capital, friend of the show, sponsor of the show. Dude, it's chaos out there. I don't know which way's up, man. Gold's at $50 million. Platinum's going through the roof. Commodities are everywhere. Good God. Will it be Trump? Will it be Kamala? Are we going to have no taxes? Dude, make some sense. What the hell's going on?
First of all, I'm thrilled that you're paying attention to platinum. I feel like we were the only ones that were excited about platinum and palladium for a while, and that's been a shoot. I mean, those positions I want to say are up 25, 30% like the last 3 weeks or something like that. So that's starting.
It's crazy.
Look, yeah, it is, and I think it's going to get crazier. So I was saying today on our little daily dots deal that we do, 20, 30 minute summation of the daily action that I don't think that the election itself will cause a big, huge move either direction, regardless of who gets elected. I think that immediately a Trump election would probably be more market positive. But I think that's mainly not really a policy thing. I think it's more reflective of nobody really knows what she'd do if she gets elected.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I mean, does she like fracking? Doesn't she? Is she building a wall? Or is it, you know what I mean? Like there's just.
Is she thinking about capital gains and taxing unreal income? Hey, explain to everybody out there, Zach. Okay. What would that do for the market if she came up with that? Because the money she's talking about is the higher income, but the big investors that really throw money into companies. What would that do potentially to the market? Because my feeling is they're going to fly to other places.
Yeah, no, they would. And it would create turmoil. It would create chaos. And this is the thing that has always frustrated me about these tax and spend liberals and Democrats, where you look at them and go, hey, guys, do you like freedom? And, well, hold on. 20 years ago, they all would have said yes, right? Like freedom. Now you're not going to, now we hear John Kerry sitting up on the stage talking about the biggest issues we face are the freedom of speech, right? The First Amendment.
Yeah.
But it's always blown me away because I sit there and I look at them, I go, the people that you're targeting are the people that have the means and the ability to avoid the tax. They're not going to pay it. They're not going to pay it. It's akin to Reagan, the Reagan era tax cuts when they had what was a 90% top end bracket, but nobody paid it. Nobody paid it. So it's purely window dressing and it's nonsensical. But that being said, Chad, like you and I have talked about a lot, I don't think policy has been driving this market. I don't even think the economy is driving this market per se. I mean, the economy is not in bad shape. I mean, in terms of the output and things like that, we all know about inflation and cost, but it's deficit spending and debt and the Federal Reserve, right? And so regardless of what happens on election day on Tuesday, that's not going to stop regardless of who's elected. And they're going to keep pumping it. But I will tell you this, I've always pushed back because every election in my adult lifetime, I've heard this is the most important election in our lifetime. And I got to the point about 3 or 4 elections ago where I went, you know what, man, I'm not buying this anymore. This is right. This is all
ever
just.
says, hey, you can vote, you cannot vote. It's really not as important as we're making it out to be. Nobody ever says that.
Yeah. It's a whatever election, right? I will join the hysteria for a second, which I never do really, and I will say I do think this is one of the most important elections of our lifetime. Not because I think that Trump is an infallible candidate. I think Trump has got his issues. I think that he's not the guy I'd handpick. But here's the thing. I think Trump believes in the Bill of Rights. I think Trump values freedom. I think he values liberty. I think he values having borders, knowing who's in our country. And most importantly, I think he's sort of the last thing standing between us and even more regulatory takeover. And you and I have talked about this a little bit, but one of the things that concerns me in this country, probably even more so than the Congress or the government writ large, is the out of control and unchecked powers of these regulatory bodies. And that power that, all of that influence that they have, that has grown drastically over this administration. And if you haven't had to interface with it, you probably don't know what it's like. But these people have, these regulators, they have no constraints. They don't face election every 4 years. They can just execute and grind political axes against whoever they want. And there's really no pushback. There's nothing you can do about it. So,
No.
and Trump has said first day in office, he's going to clean house in some of those regulatory agencies. And man, I'm sincerely hoping that takes place.
I'm talking to Zach Abraham, Chief Investment Officer, Bulwark Capital. We talk about, I always say, first of all, the biggest group of people that goes and lobbies the government now is government, the unions. You've got unelected officials who, it's not their fault at times that Congress has punted everything to them and say, well, you make up the law, you enforce the law as it goes, and we'll just go along with it. So you have people that are mindless, faceless, that just go in there and they can decide on a whim, you know what, I'm going to F with you and you can't do anything about it. And you may be right, but at the end of the day, I'm going to make your life such a living hell because I have the power. Like that thing in California a couple of weeks ago, you got all those people basically saying, look, Elon Musk, we don't like your politics. We think you're mean, so we're not going to let you fire any more rockets from here. And, because we don't like your politics. And finally, the federal government came in and said, hey, guys, we came here to do something nice, but we are the Air Force. So if we want to fire rockets, we're going to fire rockets.
We're going to do whatever we want to.
But that's insane.
No, I know. And because the average American does not have to interface with these regulatory agencies and people don't even really understand. And when I say that, I'm not like saying they're ignorant or whatever. You worry about the things you interface with, right? You worry about the things that impact your life on a daily basis. And most Americans don't interface with this stuff. And so what they don't realize is that this whole setup is grotesquely unconstitutional. How can you get nailed by a regulatory body that is unelected because you violated a rule that they passed that is not, they go, oh, it's not a law, it's a rule. And I'm like, well, if you have a rule that I break that lands me in jail, I'd call that a law.
That's
right?
a law.
That's a law. So you calling it a rule or a regulation, if that rule or regulation is punishable by serious fines or jail time, it's a law. It's a law by another name. And so what you've got is you've got a bunch of laws on the books that are landing Americans in financial hardship, that are putting Americans in prison, and no Congress ever voted on the law, right? No. They're exercising legislative powers, and constitutionally they have none.
None. It's crazy. Talking to Zach Abraham, Chief Investment Officer, Bulwark Capital. All right, the market, we finish out the year. What do you think is going to happen next year? How are you feeling about where we're headed? Let's just say your gut feeling is, let's say Trump wins. What's your gut feeling next year it looks like?
I think a Trump win is probably increases the chances of a massive rally. And when I'm saying that, I don't mean like, everything's all good, everything's all. I think that look, the policies that Trump is going to pursue are going to be somewhat inflationary, and I don't mean that I disagree with them. I mean that if you're going to unleash more productivity out of this economy based on the amount of wealth and capital that's floating around it, you're going to see increased inflation. The only way that you're not going to see increased inflation is if and you're going to see increased inflation regardless of which candidate is elected, just because the government's in a position where they can't. You're 7% of your deficit spending 7% of the economy. You're not just going to pull back on that. If you do, you create your own recession.
A monster, and you got to continue to feed it.
Yeah, 100%. Or because the reason you started spending that much was to avoid a bad economic outcome. Now, if you decrease spending, that creates the bad economic outcome, right? But when you look at what Trump's policies are, backing up the border or firming up the border. Cutting taxes, cutting regulations, not because of anything he's done, but because of the environment that is going to be inflationary. And I think that we're really flirting. Well, I think that whole blow off top scenario is still on the table, and I think things could go a lot higher. I mean, if you put the impetus, look at this system, look at valuations, look at how much money's floating around. If you put real economic growth and real productivity gains and firmed up the border, I mean, the economy would rip, right? I mean, it would go nuts. But you would see a pop in inflation, and hopefully the economic impulse, the growth impulse is significantly larger than, because that's really the game, right? We can deal with inflation so long as wage gains and economic productivity are better than that, right?
Everybody talks about the wages have gone up. Well, that's great, but they've gone up 12%, but everything else has gone up 20%. So you're down 6%. So that's a hidden tax you never feel. As far as coming out of a paycheck that you see, it comes out of your bank account.
Yep. And so I think that Trump gives you a much better chance to where you could see wage growth actually surpassing that of inflation. I think he's going to cut regulations, which are going to make goods inside the United States, certainly cheaper, less expensive. I think you'd see some pullbacks there. The other thing is that, look, some inflation is good, right? Meaning, one of the reasons, and outside of financial markets, because financial markets have seen a ton of inflation, but outside of financial markets, from 2009 to 2018, you really didn't see much inflation. Okay, but there's a reason for that. We were exporting all that inflation to China, right? So no inflation equals the Rust Belt, right? And that's the thing. Some inflation isn't bad, okay? It's when inflation is consistently higher than growth, where you've got negative real growth, that's a problem. And I think that's probably what we're looking underneath the Harris administration would be my guess eventually. Whereas I think Trump's economic policies give us the chance to at least get that growth rate up higher than the inflation rate. And as long as the growth rate and wage gains are accelerating faster than the inflation rate, we should be okay. And quite honestly, when you look at the debt situation and the deficit situation of this country, that's the only game we've got left to play. Getting this under wraps and containing inflation via fiscal discipline, that ship is sailed, right? Yeah. You've got to inflate your way out. And the only way to do that safely and comfortably for people so they're not getting wrecked is to have growth and productivity, and wage gains, be equal to exactly. And that's the game we have to play. That's the only way out of this mess.
Talking Zach Abraham, Chief Investment Officer, Bulwark Capital. All right, brother, tell everybody how they reach you. They can get their you've got your webinar coming up next month, but they want to get that risk review, that second opinion, as I like to call it. What do they do?
Yes, give us a call, 866-779-RISK, or just go to bulwarkcapitalmanagement.com. You can access our show, which is about a 20 to 30 minute show we do daily, which summarizes everything in the market, in the economy, or anything political that had to do with the market and the economy. And then we do a longer form show with interviews once a week. But yeah, you just Google Know Your Risk Radio podcast, or go to bulwarkcapitalmanagement.com.
All right, last quick question. This time next week, do we have a president, and who is it?
I think we do, man. And I think that by next Wednesday we have a president. I think it's Trump. I'm not some political soothsayer, but I think the campaigns say everything. I thought Trump would win in 2016. He did. I thought Biden would win in 2020. He did. When I look at the two campaigns, I see the Harris campaign in scramble mode, and I see Trump riding high. And I think that they're looking at the internals. They know it better than we do. Everything about her campaigns it reeks desperation to me. I think he's in a good position.
Right on, brother. You have yourself a good one and win this weekend. Big championship game.
All right, man. I sure hope we do.
Investment advisory services offered through Trek Financial LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor. The opinions expressed in this program are for general informational purposes only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual or on any specific security. Any references to performance of securities are thought to be materially accurate, and actual performance may differ. Investments involve risk and are not guaranteed. Past performance doesn't guarantee future results. Trek 24308.